Let's say China.
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 China. China.
There are next door neighbors, and you can actually see Russia from land here in Alaska.
You go over to China.
I did not have sexual relations with that woman.
Trump statement, tweeting out insults to Angela Merkel. What's he doing?
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your host.
Yes. Hello, and welcome. I am James Andrews, and you are listening to So This Happened, the only news you need if you have more money than other people. It's Tuesday, the 22nd of August, 2017. And today, the wife of Donald Trump's Treasury Secretary boasted about having lots of money, and then went on to belittle people who had less money. And this all came about when the US Treasury Secretary, Steve Mnuchin's wife, Louise Linton, boasted about flying on a government plane with her husband to Kentucky, and then went on to name in hashtags a number of the designers that she was wearing. It included Hermes, Ronald Moreau, Tom Ford, and Valentino. Somebody on Instagram made the comment that, hey, you shouldn't be tagging these companies when you're flying on a plane that we paid for as the taxpayers. Well, Miss Linton then hit back hard. In response to one person who posted on the photograph, "I'm glad we could pay for your little getaway," Miss Linton said, "Did you think this was a personal trip? ? But she wasn't quite done at that. When another person on the social media network wrote, "Please don't tag your Hermes scarf. It's distasteful," Miss Linton then went on to say, and I quote, "Adorable. Do you think the US government paid for our honeymoon or personal travel? LOL. Way too many LOLs. Have you given more to the economy than me and my husband, either as an individual earner in taxes or in self-sacrifice to your country? I'm pretty sure we paid more taxes towards our day trip than you did. Pretty sure the amount we sacrifice per year is a lot more than you'd be willing to sacrifice if the choice was yours." And that would have been bad enough, but she just wouldn't shut up. She has a little bit of the Donald Trump disease, I feel. Miss Linton then added, "You're adorably out of touch. Thanks for the passive-aggressive nasty comment. Your kids look very cute. Your life looks cute." And I think we can say, what a bitch, without any regret. And this is priceless because this also comes on the day that Steve Mnuchin is flying to Louisville to try and make a case for Congress to overhaul the tax code. You can't write this. You could not sit down and say, I'm going to write a sitcom about the White House and come up with stuff like this. You've got some rich socialite bitch saying, "Oh, wore my Hermes scarf today on the aeroplane that you little people paid for." When her husband is flying to talk about the tax code and how it is unfair to the little people. It's incredible. And also, as for the comment that Miss Linton made that we've probably paid more taxes than you ever, she's only been married to Steve Mnuchin for 2 months, so they actually haven't paid any taxes together yet. So the whole thing is ridiculous. And I love the "you're so out of touch" comment, because I think there was clearly only one person on Instagram who was absolutely out of touch, and that would be the lady tagging the Hermes scarf on a flight that the taxpayers paid for. And this all goes to show that you've got this chap, Steve Mnuchin, who is going to try and write a tax code to help the poor people. The man has literally no idea what it means to be poor. He has no idea what it means to be middle class. No idea whatsoever. So the idea that he is going to sit down and come up with this tax code that's going to be fair to the little person is completely laughable, because let's be honest, there is no way in hell they are going to write a tax code which is going to make it so that they pay more taxes. It's never going to happen. And not to drag up the election again, but it is amazing to me that all these working class people fell for the showmanship of a multi-billionaire who has never done anything for anybody in his entire life. Even his charities are used to just buy shit that he owns. But still, millions of people fell for this weird smoke and mirrors thing that's going on, where Donald Trump stands up and Steve Mnuchin stand up and say, "No, we are going to help you, the little people. You are important to us. Of course, you're poor, but that's okay. We're still here to help you." And so here is my prediction for the tax reform bill that we're about to see. There are going to be tax cuts for the poor and the middle class. There will be tax cuts, mark my words. But there are also going to be other tax cuts, and they are going to be massive, and they are going to be to corporations, and they're going to be to that top 1%. And it's going to be done very slyly. And if you don't look into it, you're going to say, "Oh yeah, this is great," because at the end of the day, if people are paying less tax, they're happy and they'll say, "Oh, I like that, I'm paying less tax, it's brilliant." Then you're not going to look at what's going on up at top. And remember this thing, shit rolls downhill. It's gravity, it's science. You can't argue with science unless you're in the Trump administration. You cannot argue with science. Shit always rolls downhill. And that is exactly what's going to happen with these taxes. It's Reaganomics. It's that trickle-down economy where if the people at the top are doing really well, well then that's going to trickle down to everybody else because they're going to be able to open more factories and employ more and more people, and that's going to be great for everybody because now everybody's going to be working because the people at the top got a tax break, and that's just brilliant. But remember this, you can't just keep cutting taxes and cutting taxes without something suffering, and you know what's going to suffer? It's going to be the stuff that's important to us, the little people. And that's enough of doomy prophecies for the day. Next, I'd like to take a look at Donald Trump's approval rating, or I think disapproval rating is actually better because it's a higher number, and we all know that the president likes higher numbers, so we'll go disapproval rating because that's going to be better for him. And specifically, I want to look at 3 states where the president won big during the election, and these are states that traditionally Republicans don't win: Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. These are 3 states that Democrats usually are always guaranteed to win, but this time Donald Trump took them. And the reasoning behind why Donald Trump won these 3 states, well, there's a lot of reasons. One in particular is that these 3 are particularly hit hard economically right now. Jobs have been disappearing and people are getting pretty fed up. So when you have this man coming saying, "Look, I'm a businessman, I'll make fucking jobs. Billions and billions of jobs. We're going to open coal mines here, here, here. We're going to just put everyone to work. It's going to be amazing." When people are desperate, they're going to say, "You know what? That sounds good. I like the man that's telling us he's going to make 1 billion jobs. That's the man I'm voting for." So perhaps that's a big part of why Donald Trump won those 3 states. But today, according to the polls, his approval rating in these 3 states is drastically lower than it has been before, and catastrophically low for a politician. In Michigan, his approval rating is 36%. In Pennsylvania, he's down to 35%. And in Wisconsin, 34%. And while these numbers are incredibly low, and to pretty much any politician that has come before Donald Trump, these would really be the final nail in the coffin of the presidency. But it doesn't seem to be that way for Donald Trump, and the question is, why? I don't actually have a very good answer for this, and I don't think anybody has a good answer. If you look back at the polling throughout the run-up to the election and even after the election, it's always been terrible for Donald Trump. On the day of the election, 60% of the voters didn't think he was qualified to be president. Less than 20% of voters thought that he had the temperament and personality to serve as commander-in-chief. And this is among Republicans and Democrats alike. So what happened? How did Donald Trump go on to win the election and become president of the United States with these terrible poll numbers? Well, that's a question that people are going to be arguing about for years and years to come. Was it that Hillary Clinton was just that unpopular? Or was it that the polls were just completely and utterly wrong? Well, the truth probably lies somewhere in the middle. But these new polls out of Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin today are very interesting to me. And I know that when someone says it's very interesting, it usually means it's completely fucking boring. Stop listening to what I'm saying now because it's about to be terribly boring. But bear with me for just a second. These are the first polls in those 3 states that actually are testing his job approval rating. Because remember, before the polls were not job approval ratings since he wasn't president. They were just, do you like the man? Are you going to vote for him? These are now job approval ratings. So this is sort of like a scorecard of how he's done so far. Looking at these massively low numbers, what that suggests to me is that people in these states looking at this going, well, wait a second, I still don't have a fucking job. My taxes are still way too high. I don't have health insurance. Am I better off than I was in November? No, I'm not. So what the fuck has the president done for me? And I think some of that must be making its way into these Donald Trump voters, these people that were promised the world on a platter. And, well, I was going to say they got shit on a platter, but they didn't. They didn't even get a platter. There's no platter at all. So maybe it's just like shit in a hand. I don't know. But what do these numbers mean for the elections coming up next year in 2018? Are people just going to jump back on the Trump train and vote Republican, or are they going to sit and go, wait a second, now nothing's changed, this isn't good, let's try something different? Well, we'll see what happens. It's nobody knows right now. And the way Donald Trump has been going after his fellow Republicans, you have to think that that base of his is looking at these other Republicans, Paul Ryan, John McCain, Lindsey Graham, and others that Donald Trump has sort of pointed the finger at and said, get in line, sunshine, you're not following the plan. You know that Donald Trump's base is now looking at those chaps and saying, oh, the president doesn't like them. I'm not sure I like them anymore. So, are we finally seeing Donald Trump's base abandoning him and going elsewhere? Again, nobody knows. And it's hard to say because where else can they go? There is nowhere else to go. They don't want to vote for any other Republican because Donald Trump has trashed pretty much every single one of them. These are people that are voting for Donald Trump now, not the Republican Party. They see Donald Trump as sort of this separate entity who's running under the Republican banner because that was sort of the closest thing to his philosophies. But they're not looking at him as the Republican president. They're looking at him as Donald J. Trump, Messiah, savior of the poor. What? Oh, we're still poor. Fuck, we're still poor. He was supposed to be our Christ. He was supposed to be Jesus, and we're still poor. And it wouldn't be fair to look at his approval rating without looking at the disapproval rating. In Michigan, 55% of the voters disapprove of the job that Donald Trump is doing. In Pennsylvania, 54% of the voters disapprove of the job he is doing. And in Wisconsin, 56% of the voters disapprove of the job that Donald Trump is doing. So, are these different polls to what we saw leading up to the election? Does the fact that these people were now asked, do you approve of the job that the president is doing? Is that different from when they said, do you want to vote for Donald Trump to be president? I think it is. I think these poll numbers, I think they are important. And I think the Trump administration has to be looking at this going, my God, they were the 3 big ones. They were the 3 that we won. We may have won them on false promises, but by God, we've got to do something because we are clearly losing those voters in those 3 very important states. And in other news, last night, Donald Trump gave a speech about Afghanistan and what the US is going to do there. Now, a lot of people had thought that perhaps he would reduce military presence there or pull out entirely. Donald Trump, in fact, said that, no, we're going to stay in Afghanistan until the job is done, which is a little bit strange for me because I seem to remember back in 2009 when Barack Obama ordered 100,000 troops to enter Afghanistan, he was widely criticized by Donald Trump and others, and the reality was it didn't work. The 100,000 troops that were sent into Afghanistan in 2009 was a complete failure. Why then does Donald think that perhaps if I send 100,000 troops, it'll work this time because they're going to be awesome troops. They're going to be amazing. It's the same thing. This is sort of history repeating itself. And this is, you remember a few days ago I was saying, we need to take these Confederate statues and put them in museums so we never forget what happened. This is why, because otherwise we forget what happened. And this is less than 10 years ago. And Donald Trump seems to have already forgotten that sending 100,000 troops into Afghanistan just didn't do anything, didn't work. But he's still making that same mistake again. Now, in all fairness to the president, he hasn't actually said what he's going to do, because in typical Donald Trump style, it was sort of a, you wait and see next week on the Trump show, whether or not we send 100,000 troops into Afghanistan. And that's it, end of the show. So, thanks for chatting. It was a lot of fun as always. And tomorrow's Wednesday, so we are halfway through the week. Incredible. Anyway, have a great night, and I will chat with you tomorrow. Bye.